The Conservative government of the UK is met with scorn and ridicule. The country is dividing. Not Brexit, but Corona is poisoning the mood. Government policy tricks are often forgiven in Britain, but when it comes to poor children, understanding ceases. The nation shows how shameless Tory MPs are. The British tabloid Daily Mirror etched at the weekend. Now worried citizens were feeding the starving children in the country if the government wasn't doing it. Last week, the Conservative MPs voted with a large majority against a proposal by the Labour opposition to finance free meals for children from poor families during the school holidays. Around 2.5 million children live in the UK households where dinner on the table is not a given. There was money for everything, the government's critics scoffed. 200 billion for Brexit, 12 billion pounds for a broken corona test system, but no money for school meals. And if you're asking why I'm talking about this topic, first of all, it is combined with the Brexit, if you see the costs for Brexit I just mentioned. But on the other hand, as I obviously made not clear enough on my channel often enough, I am presenting the information to you the way that it is published here in Germany. What information do we get about the UK, for example? What information do we get here on certain topics? And I mean in German, from German sources, not me Googling British newspapers or something. All the videos I make, I take from German sources. And that's what I want to show you as well. How are things going on in the UK perceived by the German public, not by the British? But let's continue with the topic. The UK was deeply divided when Johnson assumed his post as Prime Minister in the summer of 2019. The mutual allegations about Brexit only fell silent when Corona hit all parts of the country and households. Despite concerns about COVID-19, the UK experienced a sense of community during the shared lockdown that felt like a relief. That is gone. The country divides again. This time, the Corona pandemic is to blame. Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are already going their own way in combating the Corona crisis, which means that borders are lived that barely existed in the midst or in the minds of the residents. In addition, the wave of infections in the urban belt of Northern England is striking much harder than it is in the south, even in London. According to the government, the cases that tested positive in 1 week have risen to 385 cases in the northwest of England and 288 cases in the northeast, while in London only 118 and in the southeast of England only 73 cases. Liverpool even recorded 590 and Manchester 380 positive infections per 100,000 inhabitants. All the numbers I said before were for 100,000 inhabitants as well, of course. Liverpool, Manchester and Sheffield are therefore on the highest alert. Households are no longer allowed to meet. Pubs and restaurants that do not serve meals to go are closed. The North is suffering because COVID-19 is particularly rampant among socially weaker sections of the population who live in cramped living conditions, often with several generations under one roof. Manual jobs also dominate in the North. A large part of the population works in services, retail, healthcare, call centers and jobs where presence is required. In London, however, people work more from home. London is also a young city. Older citizens are moving to the countryside in cheaper areas. The different risk of infection leaves, and I really mean this, Johnson no choice. A national lockdown must be avoided for economic reasons. Although just today when I'm filming this, he announced that there will be another lockdown from Thursday. So before that there were only regionally different approaches with financial compensation. And that has to be negotiated with the cities in each case, an extremely bad constellation. The powerful government in London, which is stingingly allocating funds to the cities in the north. Johnson had actually hoped that he would be doing well in the north. After all, with his Get Brexit Done, he had broken Labour's strong position in the red belt of the northern cities for the first time, but not in Manchester. The city voted against Brexit in 2016 and again for Labour in the last general election. The dispute between Manchester and London was therefore foreseeable. Labour Mayor Andy Burnham of Manchester called for funds that Johnson did not approve. In the end, it was all about a ridiculous £5 million difference. But then Burnham was the more skilled politician. He pilloried Johnson. Suddenly Johnson had an adversary who, with his unmistakable Manchester accent, called on the street to fight the new poverty and injustice. How are we going to convince the people if we are forcing them to take measures that take away their livelihood? Shouted the King of the North, as Burnham is now called. It's about the whole country. We fight for you. For days there was a hail of mutual accusations between the government and the cities in the north. Didn't Johnson say that he wanted living conditions between the north and the south to be brought about, the so-called levelling up? Burnham got what he wanted. Not the missing £5 million, but a new compensation package from Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak, which is now retroactive to the beginning of August. Companies that, such as restaurants and sports centres, are open but have lower sales and are therefore no longer able to pay their employees in full, can now offer the following rule. As long as the employees still work 20% and are paid for by the employer, the state, another 49% of the former wages will be added and not just the 22% as before. The employer also contributes 4% to the loss of wages and not 22% as before. The employee receives 73% of his former wage but only works 20%. The employer pays 24% of the former wages and the state 49%. If the employee is completely released, the state alone pays 67% of the wages. And the economy is doing better with that. I hope that will remain that way from now on, because you know that I can't film minutes before I'm publishing, though I filmed this before. But today, when you're seeing this, the House of Commons will decide about the new lockdown from next Thursday. And that means many of those people will not be working and will need the 67% of the wages, although it's a bit low to survive on that in some areas, I'm quite sure. But still, the government there finally gave in, but lost a lot of political capital on the way there, especially in the socially disadvantaged population that Johnson wanted to serve with Brexit and bind to the Conservative Party. Johnson also has an opponent when it comes to children's meals. Footballer Mark Rashford, a charismatic 22-year-old athlete. Back in the spring, the Manchester United striker caused a stir when he succeeded in a call to secure free school meals for children in need during the lockdown. By early June, the charities he worked with were able to distribute food to 4 million children. It was only when Rashford publicly asked the government to finally do something about child poverty that the Johnson government responded with a voucher system. Now history is repeating itself. Because the government paid cities 63 million in aid to families in need and poured an extra 9.3 billion into welfare, Tory MPs voted in Parliament against free children's meals during the holidays. Well, that was a goal on their own side of the field. A flood of companies has meanwhile announced that they will give the socially disadvantaged a helping hand. Again, Rashford and the charity Fair Share UK lead the movement, while Johnson is left behind. When it came to Brexit, Johnson's chief advisor Dominic Cummings called out to the Londoners, "Go north, get out of your London crystal ball. You don't know what the people there think." The question is, when was the last time Johnson left his crystal ball behind? And if you now want to know more about European or global politics, YouTube has chosen another of my videos right here for you on the end screen, right next to your chance to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in my next video. Click and enjoy. Viel Spaß!